The gorgeous young lady walked leisurely toward her intended goal. The maids stood in a row and escorted her with silent stares. Passing the woman, the young lady wished them a good morning. When the girl passed them, the maids began to discuss her. They genuinely didn't understand how she could have changed in just one night. The maids knew that the girl was shy and modest, but today they saw a very different person. It shocked them. The young mistress came to her husband. She was anxious but assertive and didn't want to stop. The girl offered her husband a divorce. The young gentleman was shocked by what she said. He didn't understand why such a statement would be made all of a sudden. Dumbfounded, he could only what to interject what she said. But the girl wasn't about to back down. The girl calmly repeated her glories to him and said that there was not and never had been love and warmth in their marriage, so much so that she saw no point in living together. The young lady said she didn't need anything. She just wanted to leave. He was silent. The mistress never heard an answer, said his silence meant agreement, and decided to leave. Claude was enraged. He grabbed Mrs. Ayla's hand, pulled her closer to him, and told her that he had no intention of divorcing her. Claude was persistent. He said he wouldn't let her go on any pretext. Even in death, he won't let her go. He didn't want to lose her like that. Ayla left him for her room. She was very excited and confused. Ayla didn't understand what she should do next. She wondered why he was so adamantly against divorce and didn't know the answer. Just a week ago, the young lady was just an ordinary girl, a college student. She and her friends were celebrating the end of the semester. They were having fun because next up for them was something else entirely, namely adulthood. But unfortunately, the girl got very drunk and carelessly stumbled. Such a prank cost her her life. But fortunately, or unfortunately, the girl was given a second chance. She was reborn and fell into the body of the young mistress. It was just a minor character in the romantic fantasy, the prince, my prince, who was doomed to a tragic death because of her husband's cheating. The daughter of a viscount, Ayla was forced to marry Duke Claude Reinhardt to pay off her father's debt. And the reason Claude agreed is very simple. The girl was quiet and never argued with him. He just wanted a wife from a weak family. Claude paid off the debt, but he left her. He didn't see her as a wife. Even on their first anniversary, the girl was alone. He avoided her in everything. After the wedding, he left her, and she spent their wedding night crying alone. Claude was an extremely heartless man. Under the guise of fighting monsters, he gathered people to stage a rebellion. However, the rebellion was suppressed. Claude tried to lead the troop into the palace, but the first prince, the novel's protagonist, noticed in time. The prince decided to strike back and execute the entire family because of the rebellion. Ayla was captured and beheaded. There was no further mention of her in the book. Unfortunately, the girl got caught in the heroine's body. She was confused as to why she should die because of her husband. The girl knew she had to get away from him before it was over. The girl sat in thought as she was suddenly interrupted by a woman's voice. The woman at the door said she was about to go in. The girl was a little puzzled. She knew maids weren't supposed to do that. They work and behave differently. The maid was very furious. She asked Ayla why she missed dinner and didn't tell her anything. The Duke was angry with her. She said the girl was exhausted. I also ordered her to stop acting like this, and she needs to start acting like it. The girl was just amazed that the author took such a turn. She felt bad for the heroine. Even the maids looked down on her. She didn't realize how hard it was for the heroine to live that life, and she decided she needed to change some things. The girl decided that the heroine had had enough of the mockery and rude behavior of the maids towards her. The girl stood up, straightened her back, and asked what the other one's name was. A little taken aback, the maid said her name was Jane, and added, asking with a bewilderment in her voice, "What is Ailey waiting for? She should apologize." Ailey was shocked and furious at her words. She pitied the poor heroine, as she was looked upon with contempt and condescension even by the servants. She threw the vase of flowers in a rage. Ailey looked at the maid with disdain, saying that the vase had accidentally fallen, and asked her if she should apologize now for her behavior. She asked if the maid had hurt herself. She knew she had to use the full power of the situation to show her superiority. The girl didn't know what the real Ailey would do, but she firmly knew she had to do everything she could to make sure something like this didn't happen. The girl said that the maid should be punished for her words and should remove the splinters. The girl said in a rage that the maid was dismissed, as it was not profitable for her to keep such a worthless servant near her. The maid could not stand the pressure from her mistress and hurriedly left the room. The girl knew she needed to raise her profile and frantically wanted the rumors to spread quickly. Ailey knew that the sooner the bad reputation about her spread, the sooner she would divorce her husband. The girl planned a cunning plan. She wanted to get rid of her obligations and have fun to the fullest. 3 days later, the maids were gossiping about her. They said that the girl began to behave very strangely and did not understand why the Duke married her. The maid was puzzled as to how she could do nothing and just rest. They said she acts like a lady of the house, but she is not. Since he and the Duke didn't have a very good relationship, Ailey called out to the maid. That one came quickly to mistress. Ailey said she hadn't seen her before. The latter was taken aback and said that she had recently joined her duties, since the old maid was fired and she was hired in her place. The maid said her name was Liana. Ailey said with a smile on her face that she wouldn't be here long, and she needed to take good care of her. Liana was taken aback by mistress's words. She said she would never disobey Ailey's orders and would serve her faithfully. She wanted to work with her for a long time and waited for her orders. Ailey said with a smile as she told her to tell the maids to bring her some snacks and a catalog. Ailey wanted to do some shopping for herself again. Liana was surprised that she wanted an appetizer again, and a dumbfounded woman said that mistress could eat anything. Ailey knew she couldn't be a villainess without luxury. She ate whatever she wanted and thought it was happiness. After the meal, she made the decision that for now she would go to her husband and talk to him. A maid came to her and told her that the Duke was waiting for her and he wanted to talk to her. Ailey was taken aback. She realized she had been caught, but she didn't intend to just give up. She walked with the maid and hoped he would give her consent to the divorce. The closer they got, the more Ailey wondered why the Duke had called her. The thought crossed her mind that he wanted to reprimand her for her wastefulness and drive her away. She walked on, regardless of what awaited her. With a brisk stride, she walked toward him. The maid shouted at her to wait and not to go alone. Ailey said it was fine and she would go alone, so they could meet up later. Ailey walked in and quickly asked her husband why he was looking for her and why he needed her. Ailey hoped she would say she would divorce her, but unfortunately, he asked if she was ready for the banquet. Ailey asked in confusion which banquet we were talking about. The Duke said the banquet would be organized by the first prince in 10 days. The heroine recalled the actions that took place in the real story. It was about the prince's birthday banquet. And 6 months later, Claude mutinied. Ailey said that everyone around her was complaining about her wastefulness and asked him if he had heard about it. The Duke was confused. She said she carelessly spends his money on various jewelry. The Duke was a little taken aback and said that it was not wasteful at all, and if she wanted something, she could just write a list, and he would buy it for her. The girl was shocked at his words. She thought he would be furious with her for spending money, since she spent a lot. Ailey decided to tell him that she wasn't fulfilling her duties, but he calmly told her that if she didn't want to do it, then let her not do it. He wasn't forcing her. The Duke said that in return for her whims, he wants her to stop with the divorce nonsense. Ailey couldn't utter a word. After their conversation, she wondered what she should do next. She had no choice. She needed to escape to stay alive, but she knew there was no way she could tell Claude that. Ailey sat very saddened. She kept wondering why her husband didn't want a divorce. She knew he didn't even come into her bedroom. It didn't take long for Ailey to sit in sad reflection. She was determined to escape. She wanted to sell her jewelry and expensive outfits to cover her travel expenses. Ailey decided to act more decisively. She decided to check out what her escape would look like. The girl made a rope out of a sheet, tied it on the balcony, and climbed down. She knew that at a time like this, security was changing, and she would be able to realize what she had planned. But unfortunately for her, the plan went awry, as her rope failed and broke. She was falling rapidly to the bottom. Ailey was very scared, and she closed her eyes. She felt so bad that she couldn't even feel the pain. Claude caught it. She was very surprised. The girl hadn't expected this. Ailey asked how long he had been here. He looked at her and calmly said that from the moment she opened the curtain. The girl was relieved that he had caught her from such a great height. She only managed to ask him why he hadn't said anything to her then, since he'd seen what she was doing. Claude said he was afraid she would fall over if he said anything. The girl timidly said she hadn't fallen, just her clothes were torn. She told him she was fine and he could let her go. Claude said he wouldn't let her go until he was sure she was okay. He asked what she was even trying to do. The girl knew that if she told the truth, she would be in big trouble. Ailey said she just wanted to go for a walk. She knew he wouldn't believe it, and I thought I'd tell the truth. Gathering her courage, she said she wanted to escape as she didn't want to be in a place like this anymore. He looked at her in surprise and asked if she hated him so much that she wanted to run away. The girl was surprised. She hadn't expected to see him like this. He always hid his emotions. Claude looked at her and said that she might have hurt herself that way. Ailey said she just wanted to leave. She was worried about her life. The young man said, taking it to the bedroom. Leaving her in the room, he told her to rest. Ailey said they weren't done talking and thanked him for paying off her father's debt. Contrary to the fact that their marriage of convenience, and even if he cheated on her, she was grateful to him. He was surprised when she said he wasn't faithful to her, but she said she knew everything. He constantly avoided her and favored the war over his wife. Ailey knew he didn't like her. He was a little puzzled. Ailey decided not to give up her position and continued on. The girl said they didn't sleep in the same bedroom and that they had spoken very little since the wedding. And when she said divorce, he wouldn't even look at her. He was sure it was some kind of misunderstanding. She was driving him crazy. Ailey wanted to end the conversation and walk away from him. She was frantic for a divorce. He asked her to give him another chance. Claude asked her if he would love her, and they would have love. Then she would change her mind about getting a divorce. Ailey was puzzled. She didn't understand why he was talking about love. Ailey thought it was a good chance and should be taken. The girl told her husband that if he made her fall in love with him, they would not divorce. She knew that if she took the right chance, she could divorce him. She told him she had one condition. Ailey said he had 1 month to do everything. She knew it was impossible to do such a thing in such a time, and thus he would lose his chance. Ailey said that if her heart remained unchanged by the end of the month, he would give her a divorce. The girl knew that if there had been more time, she still wouldn't have fallen in love with Claude. Teetering between life and Claude, she chooses life. He agreed. The girl reminded him that he only had 1 month. He left, and the young lady was left alone. She knew it was only 6 months until the mutiny, so that month she could spend. Knowing he won't fall in love, at least he'll live in luxury. Ailey heard a noise outside the window, early in the morning. She knew no one was expected, and I thought it might be someone influential. A maid came to Ailey's house. Ailey asked the maid what had happened, as she noticed quite a few crews had arrived. The maid was overjoyed and excited. She said the crews brought gifts for her. Ailey was surprised. The maid asked to go quickly and see what had arrived. She frantically wanted to go and start working on a new image of her mistress. Ailey asked the girl what the gifts were since there were so many crews. The girl said there was a lot of jewelry and beautiful dresses, and that there are even diamonds from Princess Shay herself. Ailey was puzzled and asked the maid what kind of diamond it was. The maid said it was the most expensive diamond in the empire. It belonged to Princess Shay's kingdom, which was defeated 100 years ago. The maid was collecting Ailey. Ailey in turn thought of the Duke, about his intention to buy her love. Ailey laughed frantically because of the situation. The maid showed the diamond to Ailey. She looked at it and realized why everyone thought it was so expensive. Ailey told the maid that she wanted to meet her husband. The girl was sure the hostess wanted to thank the Duke, but the woman replied that she wanted to return the gift as it didn't suit her. The maid was shocked. Ailey didn't just walk in on her husband. She stormed in like a tornado. She was angry with him because of his behavior. The Duke was confused. He timidly asked her about the gifts. The girl said that this manner of behavior was not fair to her. He misunderstood her a little and said if she didn't like the gifts, they could return them and buy something else. Exactly what she'd like, because I didn't want to upset her. She was angry with him. He wanted to buy her love with money. Ailey told him that he wouldn't get his way that way, because money can't buy love. Taking his eyes off the girl, he said he wanted to show her his sincere feelings for her in this way. She yelled that she didn't need to show her feelings that way. But deep down, I wanted to accept it. He was very handsome, but she wouldn't let herself. Duke said he'd throw it away then. He had already swung around and was about to throw it away when suddenly Ailey shouted and told him not to throw it away. She would take it. He told her he would never dare buy her heart with money. He thought she would love the gift. Ailey thought she shouldn't have pissed him off like that. The girl said she would have the stone safely in her possession and walked slowly toward the door. In the aftermath, he asked Ailey what kind of gifts she liked. After a little thought, the young lady said that such gifts in which much more feelings. Ailey left, and the Duke was left alone. He thought she liked everything, but he was wrong. Duke Reinhardt was incredibly wealthy, and his influence surpassed that of the imperial family. But he knew that all the gold in the world, and his, including his, didn't help him at 15 when his mom died of poisoning. He was depressed and could do nothing to get her back. He wasn't helped by the influence at 16 when his father was murdered before his eyes. After the death of a loved one, he searched for the killer for a long time, but all attempts failed, and he couldn't find any information. After moments like that, his goals changed forever. He didn't want to lose the people he loved, and preferred not to love at all than to cause himself unbearable heartache again. He decided to marry of convenience, and thought that as long as he was generous, his wife would be with him. But unfortunately, she wanted to leave, and he didn't understand why. He knew he was scaring her. Even on their wedding day, she was scared and even afraid to take his hand. He wanted to come to her the first night, but he was afraid of messing it up. The servant said it would be all right, and it would be all right if he came later. He left, telling her to rest. They never spoke again after that. The Duke noticed that she had become a different person. He didn't want to lose anything or anyone in his life. He blamed himself for everything, but was glad he knew everything and could fix everything. He thought a month would be enough time for him to make things right, and then she would stay with him. A butler came to see the Duke. He brought him tea and food. The Duke asked Henry if he had seen anyone who didn't like jewelry and other lavish gifts, and then asked what gift he thought would show his feelings. Henry wondered with a smile on his face if it had anything to do with Ailey. The butler said the lady wants the Lord's heart, not all the gifts. The Duke said he gave her his heart always, but in his own way. Butler pointed out that they unfortunately hardly spent any time together. The Duke pondered the butler's words and said he would stop by to see his wife today. The butler was a little puzzled and asked if he should come back tomorrow. But the Duke was persistent and said today. The maid hurriedly ran into the lady's room and said that she should pack quickly, or the Duke would come to see her. The maid thought the Duke intended to spend the first night with his wife. Ailey was in a state of shock. She knew he was interested in war, but she didn't think he was a pervert. Ailey visualized the picture in her mind, how he comes to her. She was determined not to let that happen, and fight back. She didn't want that fate. The Duke came to her. He wanted to spend time with her in spite of his many jobs. Ailey said that since he came, he must be very hungry. He said he was hungry as work was taking up a lot of his time. He touched her and told her that he would give everything to only her today. She was furious at his words, and I hit him with all my might. He didn't even budge, and she was in a lot of pain. He didn't understand why she was so angry. He left all his business for her. Ailey said she had a right to be angry since he wanted to spend the first night with her, regardless of her feelings. He was struck by thunder. Duke said there was a total misunderstanding. He just wanted to show her his feelings and how much he cared for her. Ailey didn't understand why he had come to her so late then. He changed in front of her and said he just wanted to be with her. He wanted to go and leave her. Ailey got a little uncomfortable and said she wanted to go for a walk so he could keep her company. The Duke suggested that she go into the garden. The young lady agreed. When she saw the place, she was very surprised as she had not seen it before. She really liked it. Looking at her husband, Ailey asked if he was okay because he looked kind of weird. The Duke said he was fine. Ailey said the garden is very beautiful. Duke said quietly that this place was created by his mom. The girl knew what had happened to his parents, and she understood that it was not an easy time at all for him. Ailey apologized for disturbing his memories. He said it was okay, and that it was all in the past. The young lady asked if he came to the garden often. Claude said he didn't like flowers, and only came when he thought of his mother. Ailey plucked a flower and gave it to her husband. She asked him to take it and said that, when you see something beautiful, you become a better person. He accepted and said she was right. Claude asked if she liked flowers. Ailey said she really likes them as they are beautiful. He plucked a flower. Claude gave her a flower, gently placing it in her palm, telling her that it suited her very well. The girl blushed a little at his words. Claude asked her to memorize that moment. He asked her to wait. And with all tenderness, he walked over and hooked a flower in her hair. She had thought he wanted to kiss her. Ailey realized that such walks could influence her decisions and said they'd better go inside. After the walk, Ailey called for the maid to bring her some food. Liana looked at her for a long time and said she looked very pretty. Ailey sent a maid over. I kept thinking about the Duke. She enjoyed their walk, and it was all even romantic. But she knew she couldn't afford to fall in love. She knew she should hold out for a month and they wouldn't see each other again. Ailey had been thinking about her husband all night. She genuinely didn't understand why he wasn't acting like the narrative. Ailey knew that if the flow of the narrative was disrupted, her life was in jeopardy. Standing outside his office, she knew she had to find out as much as she could about him. Her thoughts drifted away when the butler opened the door. He was surprised and wondered what she was doing outside the office. Ailey said she was just taking a walk. The butler said he had worked in the house for a long time and respected the lady, so she could call him Henry. She asked if Duke was working. He said the Duke was resting and she need not disturb him. Ailey decided to take the opportunity to enter. She saw him. Shyly, she said she was walking and got a little lost. Claude closed the door and said he was free and she could come in. Claude looked at her fondly and said she was looking for him. Ailey was taken aback and said that she had come by accident and she had better leave. But the Duke suggested she stay. Ailey said that since he's working, she doesn't want to disturb him. Claude said she couldn't stop him. Ailey agreed to have a cup of tea. He made her tea. Ailey was puzzled. In the book, he was completely different. And she hadn't expected such kindness to her. She said she was very pleased to drink tea prepared by her husband. Claude looked at his wife and said that she had changed a lot. She used to be afraid to look at him. The young gentleman asked how the real her was the one before or the one now. The girl knew that she and the heroine were two different people, so I asked my husband what he didn't like about the way she is now. Claude said that he liked everything the other way around and even wished it had been like this before. Ailey said it's been a whole year, and that's why she's changed so much, and even more so in such a challenging environment. The Duke looked at her in bewilderment. Ailey said that the servants looked down on her and did not accept her as a mistress in the house. And it's led to these changes. The Duke was furious at what she said. He couldn't believe she'd been treated like this all this time. He asked if that was why she fired the maid. Ailey confirmed his hunch, as she didn't want to hide the obvious fact. Ailey said that the new maid is very good and is doing well, and treat her with respect. Claude was angry. He wanted to punish everyone for inappropriate behavior towards his wife. The Duke summoned the butler and told him to dismiss everyone, leaving a minimum of servants, and found those who disrespected the mistress. Claude said, if the butler finds the newcomers, then let him personally teach them himself. The maid came to Ailey and told her to get ready for the prince's birthday ball. Ailey didn't want anything and told the maid to pick everything up herself. Ailey didn't really want to go to the ball. After all, she knew what and who would do to her. Remembering a story from the books, she didn't understand why everyone was making such a mockery of the heroine. She knew there would be a lot of people there who looked down on her always, and she was determined that it wouldn't happen again. And she's going to show everyone who she is. Ailey walked and pondered the ball and the prince himself. From the short story, she knew he was sociable and kind. She was interested in meeting him in person. As she entered the room, she saw that there were flowers everywhere. She was struck by the beauty and was at a loss as to how they didn't wilt. She touched and saw golden sand, and I realized it was a sign of magic. She knew it was very costly and didn't understand what her husband was thinking. Claude came to her. She was surprised. He had never stopped by to see her. He brought her a bouquet of flowers and asked if she liked the gift. She said she liked it, but one bouquet would have been enough for her. Claude said he wouldn't give his wife one bouquet. Ailey said she has enough on her plate going to the garden, and this gift is overkill. Claude said it's not overkill and it's nothing to him. After standing for a moment longer, he wished her good night and left. The girl was alone with her thoughts. She frantically didn't understand why he wasn't acting like the narrative. The days flew by quickly, and it was time for the ball. Ailey was very pretty in her outfit. Ailey said she liked everything and thanked the maids for their work. They were flummoxed and said it was their job, while giving her tons of compliments. The girl was puzzled by this behavior. Ailey had sent everyone away, and only her maid remained. She asked the girl what had happened, why the maid's attitude toward her had changed so drastically. She was pleased, of course, but something was keeping her in suspense. The maid told Ailey that the master fired everyone who ignored or disrespected Ailey, and now they're recruiting new ones. Ailey was shocked and realized now why there had been such a commotion in the house then. Ailey thanked Liana for telling her everything. The maid was glad she could help. The girl said she had to go, or the time was getting close. The maid wished Ailey good luck and a good night. She came out and saw her husband. He gave her his hand and said he would accompany her. He was fascinated by her. Claude asked why she was looking at him like that. Ailey said the outfit suits him very well. He looked at her and said affectionately that she was gorgeous. His words made her forget everything inside. The girl said she heard he fired the servants. Claude said they didn't know their place. Ailey said he shouldn't have gotten that far, but he was sure that no one dared treat his wife like that, and he promised he'd deal with anyone who hurt her. A carriage came to pick them up. They moved on their way. Ailey asked her husband what the prince was like. She was interested in him because he was the main character in the book. He was surprised at such a question and didn't understand why she was the one wondering. Ailey said they were going to his birthday party and that she was interested. Claude gave her a hard look and said he didn't like it when his wife asked about another guy while he was around her. The Duke said the prince is not a very pleasant person. Ailey wanted more information. But the girl knew he was against the imperial family, and so she understood why he didn't want to talk to her about such a topic. The Duke asked if she had ever met him. The girl said she'd seen him a couple times. and nothing else. He looked at her and said that when she met him, she would figure it out for herself. Stepping out of the carriage, the Duke offered his hand to his wife. She didn't want to fall, so she accepted his help. But still, I stumbled. Luckily, my husband was around. Duke caught it. His face was so close, and it embarrassed her. She timidly thanked him for picking her up, and hurriedly took another position. Claude asked her to be a little more careful, as she might hurt herself. Ailey said they were running late, and they had to hurry to their appointment. He followed her. They entered the hall. Their married couple was introduced to all the guests. But immediately everyone started whispering behind their backs. Ailey told herself that she would just ignore those who treated her badly. And he won't pay attention, so as not to spoil his mood. They were followed by the prince. He was presented in all his glory. Ailey see him and is a little taken aback. The short story described him a little differently. He had a stick temper and was always teasing Claude. The prince sat tiredly leaning back in his chair while his father, the young emperor, spoke a toast. He asked the prince to say a few words. The prince was a little out of it and made a joke that wasn't funny and drank the bottle down his throat. Said with a smile that he hoped all the guests enjoyed the drinks and food. Ailey was shocked. The beginning. There was little description of the banquet in the novella, but that's not how he was described. She didn't understand how he could drink on his can. He was the protagonist and didn't take such liberties. The Duke looked at her reaction and asked if she now believed his words. Claude stood pondering. He was not fond of such events, since he knew most of the guests wanted to get their hands on it. Ailey asked him if he wanted to talk to someone. They looked at each other. Claude was glad of that. If he had known she wasn't afraid of him, he would have come to her sooner. Claude said he didn't want to talk to others and would rather lose weight with her. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the emperor. They greeted each other courteously. Ailey knew that her husband was an authority to everyone. The emperor wanted to speak to the Duke alone, but he refused. Ailey heard and said she would be fine, so he could boldly go. Ailey stood there, immersed in her thoughts. Her peace was disturbed by one of the ladies, who couldn't wait to insult Eileen. Ailey decided not to bear a grudge. She decided to fight back once and for all. The girl was shocked by this behavior of Ailey and ran to her husband in tears. He started yelling at her that since she hadn't had her first night with the Duke, there was no need to be angry at the ladies who came with pure intentions to support her. He wanted to hurt her and was not ashamed of his anger. They took Ailey out of her mind. She was angry that they were discussing such a thing in public. It was her private life. He had no right to do that. Ailey threatened him and told him that if they didn't apologize, she would tell the Duke. He started to apologize, but afterwards he wanted to say something, but Ailey interrupted him and poured a glass on him. Determined to teach him a lesson for his shameful words to her, he started yelling at her and everyone started watching their scuffle. Ailey decided to come out the winner and told everyone that he yelled at her and talked about her first night, which is unacceptable on his part. Her antics attracted and mocked the prince. He said he had fun, and that she made him laugh out loud. All the gentlemen opened their mouths at what was happening. The prince took the wine bottle and poured the contents over the man's head, saying that he had behaved very wrongly towards the Duchess. He said he couldn't let it go. Ailey didn't understand why he was taking her side, since he had never paid attention to her in the novella. He was interested in another persona. The prince started a conversation with Ailey. She was surprised that he knew her. He said she was a lot of fun. He saw the Duke and his father and decided to leave. But lastly, he touched her and gently said, "See you later." Ailey was a bit taken aback by this behavior of the prince. The Duke and His Majesty stood on the highway. The Duke's thoughts were occupied with his wife. He was worried that no one would hurt her. He knew he had to be with her. The emperor distracted him from his thoughts and began to ask questions of a provocative nature. At the moment, the empire is divided into two camps, one of the aristocrats and the other of the imperialists. The emperor frantically wanted Claude on his side. The Duke was neutral, but everyone wanted to win him over to their side. The emperor told him that he had done much for the empire and wants him to continue to serve. Their conversation was interrupted by a servant who said there was an unpleasant situation in the hall. The prince poured the bottle over the lord's head. They hurried into the hall. The emperor was angry with the prince because of his antics, and Claude was frantic to make sure his wife was okay. Claude saw the prince touching his wife. He was upset and furious. Since no one dared touch Ailey but him, Ailey saw her husband and his fierce gaze. She suddenly realized that he wasn't the only one looking at her like that. Ailey turned around and saw the woman, and she knew right away it was the main character. Ailey thought she was done for. She knew that if you got the prince interested in addition, you could get the prince's jealous girlfriend. Ailey didn't realize what she should do. Claude came up to her, and she was very glad of it. She saw him as the best option after those two. He said he heard about their altercation and asked her if she was okay. Ailey said it's okay. He asked her if the first prince had done anything to her. Ailey said nothing happened between them. The Duke asked perplexedly why she was with him then. Ailey looked at him and saw that he and the girl had the same eyes. She couldn't believe it and wondered why he was jealous of her. Ailey said that the prince was just helping her with her problem, but nothing serious. Claude said he didn't have to go and leave her alone. He apologized to her. Claude said the ball would be over soon and suggested she leave. Ailey agreed, and off they went. On the way out, she thought about the fact that he had apologized to her. It wasn't like him at all. She knew he had changed, but had no idea why. Lying in bed, Ailey thought about what had happened. She didn't understand why everyone had that reaction. The girl knew she had to sit tight and hold out a little longer, and soon she would get a divorce. The butler brought Ailey 3 letters, saying only one was important. Opening the letters, the girl saw an apology. She thought it was very strange. She asked Henry if he had any idea what all this was for. He said everyone wants to get on her side. Henry said the Duke pressed her abusers and punished her severely. Ailey said it was too much, and she asked me to burn the letters. The 3rd letter is from the princess. Ailey was invited to a tea party at the palace. She didn't want to go after the recent incident, but Henry said such a thing should not be refused. Ailey knew that the princess in the novella was a very important person. She could be crowned. There are 2 heirs to the empire, and so everyone is divided into 2 camps. Some time ago, there were 3 heirs in the imperial family, but sadly, the prince's brother died under mysterious circumstances, and soon the empress died as well, and it was just the 2 of them. Ailey frantically wanted to know what had happened to the young prince. After a little thought, Ailey said to have the butler send a letter with a favorable reply. Ailey went to her husband and apologized for what happened at the ball. She said that even though they attacked first, she shouldn't have done that. She seemed bad to the others. He said she had nothing to apologize for, and she did the right thing, adding that if the next time there is something like this, she can pour alcohol on them. Ailey said that the princess invited her to a tea party. Claude said he'd go with her. Ailey imagined what that would look like, and she felt a little funny. Ailey said he couldn't go as it would be all ladies there. He said if anyone was rude to her, she could pour tea on them. Ailey was a little puzzled and said he was hot. Duke said the hotter the better, and asked her to memorize the names of the abusers so he could destroy them. The day of the tea party with the princess came. Ailey asked the maid if she was dressed too brightly for such an event. The maid said that she was very well dressed in brightly colored clothes, and since she hadn't been to such events for a long time, she needed to draw attention to herself. Ailey arrived at the tea party. Everyone was whispering behind her back, and not just behind her back. She didn't like it at all, and it made her angry. The girls started discussing her antics, and one of the ladies said that even a commoner didn't do so, Ailey, adding that the one didn't even have proper education since she didn't know who was from what family. Ailey decided to find out who this girl was so that she could be properly punished for her rude words. So Ailey decided to teach her a little lesson. Ailey said that the one insulted not only her, but also the prince, and such behavior is punishable. since Ailey and the prince committed the same act. The girl was shocked and started making excuses that she had said no such thing. The princess listened to their dialogue for a bit and politely asked the lady to leave and think about her behavior. All the other girls didn't want to get caught up in the anger and kept quiet. The main character of the novella, who was the prince's love interest, asked Ailey how her relationship with the Duke was. Ailey didn't want to fight with her and politely told her that she shouldn't take such an interest in other couples as it wasn't good. The girl said couples should get along and asked her not to show interest and not to hit on other men. Ailey looked at the girl and realized that she was not at all like she was described in the novel. There she was, shy and very courteous to everyone. Ailey thought that in a novella, you don't show everything and reveal the real characters' personalities, and that could be a whole other story. She didn't know what she should do in such a case. One of the ladies said they all know they don't have a good relationship with their husband. Ailey wanted to tell her to watch what she said, but then she heard her husband's voice. Claude was pretty pissed that ladies shouldn't talk about their relationship like that, as it upset him, adding that they have a great relationship. The princess asked what he was doing at the tea party. Claude said he came to escort his wife. The princess said she didn't know he loved her so much and motioned for him to sit down. The Duke said they were on their way out. Ailey told her husband that he was rude, and nothing happened. She was grateful for his help, but she could have figured it out on her own since she was used to ridicule. Ailey said that they were right, that things were not smooth, and there was no affection in their relationship. Their conversation was broken by the first prince. The prince gave his attention to Ailey, and her husband really didn't like it. He asked not to address his wife by her first name. The prince said he would deny his request. The prince was surprised that the Duke was so protective of his wife. The prince said, apologized for being so rude, and asked Ailey if he could call her by her first name. Ailey said, emphatically and assertively, no. He said she could resolve it at their other meeting. Ailey yelled at him that she didn't like it either, but he didn't listen to her and left. They were driving home, and Claude said that the prince liked her. Ailey said it's not like that, and she doesn't care what he thinks of her. She asked her husband what was wrong. He looked at her and said he was very jealous. Ailey was in her room thinking about their trip. I was thinking about my husband. His eyes seemed so sincere to her. Her peace was disturbed by a maid. The girl asked if Ailey's lunch would be brought to the room. Ailey said she wouldn't mind. Ailey's butler came to Ailey and informed her that the Duke was calling her to dinner. The young lady didn't really want to go, but agreed nonetheless. The maid was very happy that her mistress would be dining with the master. She said everything would be fine and that she shouldn't worry. Ailey entered the hall. She was surprised by the beauty and thought she should visit the place repeatedly. Claude invited her to the table. He said he let everyone go as he wanted to talk to her alone. He apologized for his behavior at the tea party, saying that Ailey was right and he was being rude. He also said he wanted to spend more time with her, to get to know her better as a person. He wished to get to know her better as an individual and as his wife. Ailey knew this had all gone too far already. Claude said it meant a lot to him that she wasn't afraid of him anymore. Ailey couldn't afford to sit and listen to him speak. In a rush of emotion, she stood up and said she had to leave. She knew that if she continued to listen to him, he would change her plans. It's been a few days since their lunch. Ailey reflected on her husband. Just as suddenly, he entered the room and brought her breakfast. Ailey was greatly surprised and asked why he had come and not a servant. He said he wanted to see her and brought her breakfast to watch her eat. Ailey sat down to eat. She saw all her favorite dishes and was puzzled. She wondered how he knew what she liked. She asked if he had eaten. Duke said he usually skips breakfast and he would just look at her. Ailey wanted to feed him. He ate obediently. And she thought she was feeding a wild animal she had only tamed. Ailey said he's doing really well, and now he can eat on his own. Ailey asked to tell the real reason for his coming to her. He seemed to want to be closer to her and begin to slowly get to know her and her preferences, and asked what she was doing today. Ailey hesitated and asked what he wanted. The Duke timidly invited her to the festival. It didn't take long for Ailey to agree. He told her to get ready. He would come back for her later. She was alone, and she thought he asked her out. She was very pleased, and Ailey even blushed a little. The maid came in to see her and said she had heard that the Duke had invited her to the festival. Lyanna was so excited, and Ailey asked what she was so excited about. Lian said they were going to a festival, and it was famous for its beauty and coming only in pairs. Also, if someone gives flowers at the festival, they will be together forever. Lian said that the Lord hadn't left his room in days and was preparing to go out into the world. Ailey knew he had a lot of work to do, and I realized he was trying to get things done faster to make time for her, and so they can go out in peace for the festivities. Ailey was collected by the maid. The girl looked fiercely beautiful. Ailey thanked Lian for her work and left. They arrived at the festival. Ailey realized what the maid was talking about. It was a beautiful place. She saw a lot of interesting things and wanted to take a closer look. In a rush of emotion, she grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the stores. He turned very red. She recoiled, realizing she was holding his hand. He said with a smile that if she wanted to hold his hand, she could just say so. Ailey said she just wanted to pull him to the stores. Without arguing, she took his hand, and they went to look at all the jewelry. He said she could choose whatever she wanted, and he would buy it all. Ailey said she just wanted to look at it, and there was no need to buy it. They were walking. Claude said he wanted to show her a place. He put his jacket on her and asked her to wait for him for a while. Ailey stood and smiled. She loved the view, saw the fireworks, and thought she would like to stand with her husband and see his reaction. He came and brought her flowers. The girl was puzzled. She asked if he knew what it meant. He asked her to forget everything and just accept them. Ailey noticed that everyone's mood changed for the worse after the festival, and her maid, who was always cheerful, was gloomy. Ailey asked what was wrong. Lian said that the beasts showed up at the festival, and in particular, they visited the place where her family lives. Ailey reassured the girl. The one said they were strong, and the locals couldn't handle them, but only the Duke could. Monsters that grew on evil mana are very strong and tough, and they recover quickly too, and they can only die after one hard hit. Ailey sat and thought. She realized how she could help the maid and everyone else. Claude and the butler were discussing the situation. He knew he would need to go to the site himself and deal with the monsters. Claude gave the butler instructions, and he hurriedly left. Ailey came to him. He was a little surprised. He said he needed to leave for some time and would not have time to fulfill their arrangement. She thought he would ask for more time, but he didn't. But she said she would go with him. He was against her going. But Ailey knew she had to go and arrange for him to meet the blacksmith who would forge a sword for him. Noah was a legendary blacksmith. He went through many difficulties, but still he managed to create a weapon that could kill monsters with a single swing. The first to notice its value was the prince. He was looking for evidence of Claude's rebellion, but escaped. Ailey wanted to find the sword and said she would go with him. The Duke did not want to take her with him as he was very worried about her. They argued for a long time, but Ailey was persistent. Ailey came to her husband's house in the evening as they had no arrangement. She didn't want to give up and unintentionally wonder. It was necessary for her to go to whatever it was, as not only her life, but also her husband's depended on it. But Claude stood his ground and would not take her with him. He said she should wait at home. He was very worried about her. After all, there were a lot of monsters where he was going. She decided not to give up her position and sat beside him while he pretended to sleep. An hour later, he could already hear the silence. Looking over, he saw that she had fallen asleep sitting on the ground. He took her onto the bed and sat beside her himself. She woke up and saw him sitting beside her. She was very embarrassed. Ailey decided to leave quickly. The Duke said she had won, and he would take her with him. Ailey was very happy that she had won this argument. Said she wouldn't move a step away from the guards. After a while, they packed up and moved on their way. Claude assigned 2 knights to escort her, and ordered them to guard and keep their eyes off his wife. They came to the place where the beasts had attacked. All the people were shocked that the Duchess had come. They also experienced the joy of having her visit them. Claude said he would go and look at the problem, and she should stay with the knights. The knights suggested she go to an inn, but Ailey said she wanted to go to the blacksmith. One of the knights said he knew a place where all the master blacksmiths gathered. They went to find the master. When we got to the place, and X was met by a blacksmith, he offered them his services and other craftsmen who staged their wares. Ailey said Noah was the one she wanted. The master of his craft said that the one wasn't very good at what he did and suggested she go to someone else. Ailey was very insistent, asked to be told exactly where it was located. The blacksmith explained how to get to him. Ailey found him and told him she had an order for him. She really wanted to get ahead of the prince and get the magic sword, with which you could kill a beast with a single blow. The blacksmith said he had no idea how to make such a weapon. Ailey said it was fine, and she would tell you how to make it. He asked her once. She knew how to make it, why she had come to him. She asked him if he didn't want his guns and his name to go down in history. He was a little puzzled. Ailey said if he follows her, he'll get everything he wants. Ailey said he was very capable and would be able to do everything under her guidance. He's also the only one who can do it. The recipe for the magic weapon is very simply needed. Combine mana crystal and sword. Crystals are very fragile. Even sorcerers often break them. Ailey knew that only Noah could do what was necessary and create the weapon. He had the ability to place the crystal in the sword. By constantly testing himself, he succeeded in creating magical weapons. After that, he was taken by the prince into his ranks. The sword was very valuable, and that was why Ailey wanted to be the first to get her hands on it. She knew she could rewrite history and get all the things that would help her husband win. After socializing, they got to the results she wanted. She walked away from him with happy thoughts, knowing she would soon get what she wanted. 3 days later, Noah presented the sword. He was frantically glad he had succeeded in making it. Ailey was thrilled. She offered to let him work for her. He agreed. Claude disintegrated with the monsters with ease. A local knight said he admired the Duke very much. Duke said that there are a lot of enemies, and they should deal with the monsters as soon as possible. One of the knights who was guarding Ailey came. He said that Ailey would like to see him. The Duke came to meet her, and the girl gave him a sword. He was surprised by such a gift, and fiercely pleased he liked the sword very much. Ailey told me what kind of sword it was. Claude was shocked and didn't understand how she knew about such things. The girl said she read the old books and found out about everything. He took advantage of it. After he used magic, he felt something bad, also affected by his injury. He fell and lost consciousness. Ailey was shocked. Claude woke up and said he had been in such a hurry to get to her that he hadn't transported the wound well. Ailey was very worried about him. She asked for forgiveness. Ailey was treating her husband's scratches. He said she'd had enough work. She needs to get a doctor to take care of him. She said she would take care of him and work on his wounds. And he doesn't need to be embarrassed about his scars and wounds at all. The Duke thanked her again for the gift and said that with her help, he would defeat everyone. Ailey asked him to come to her in one piece and uninjured. Claude dealt with monsters and paid no attention to his wife at all. Ailey knew that at this rate, her plan would succeed and she would get a divorce, but it was very heavy on her heart. For a complete and quick victory, Ailey decided to make as many weapons as possible with which to kill the monsters. The blacksmiths prepared the swords, and Noah used his power to insert the stones and bring the sword to completion. One of the knights took and used sword and was shocked at the result. They chopped down the monsters and defeated them all in a matter of days. One of the knights was very grateful to the Duchess. The Duke cheered him on. He said it was time for him to leave. He knew there was 1 day left and the month was ending. He couldn't let her divorce him. The Duke ordered the carriage to be prepared. He wanted to leave. Ailey sat and thought about her and her husband. She knew that the month was ending and their agreement would see them divorced. She knew he would die at the hands of the prince. Ailey knew it wasn't fair. He wasn't the same as in the novella. He was better and sincere. But unfortunately, Ailey couldn't sacrifice her life for him. Claude came to see Ailey and said he missed her very much. Ailey asked how he was doing with the monsters. He said that thanks to her, things are going as well as they can. Ailey said the month ends in 2 days. Duke was determined to go all the way and said he knew and would try until time ran out. He invited her to come with him to the barrier where the monsters were killed. Ailey agreed to go with him and went to get ready. They rode in a carriage, and the Duke said the knights had to clean everything before they arrived. He wanted to show her the beautiful scenery, which was restored thanks to her. Claude said that the knights all missed her very much without her. Ailey was upset about the whole situation that had come up. She felt uncomfortable and very upset. Claude saw the state she was in and said they would be there soon, and they would get some fresh air. Ailey and Claude stood on the wall and admired the forest. Claude told his wife that if she stayed with him, he would give all of himself to her. And he gave her a ring. He asked her to accept him no matter what her decision was. He wanted her to remember him. Ailey accepted it. She knew she'd be remembering him all the time. They were disturbed by the arrival of the knights who wanted to thank the girl. They began to speak words of gratitude. The Duke asked them not to push her around. The girl said he might not have told them so. Duke said he wanted her to look only at him. They stood looking up at the stars. Ailey said she will remember the day for a long time. The next day, the Duke broke the news about the monsters. He asked his wife to wait for him, since he needs to verify the information. Ailey said he wanted to go with him. He was very worried about her, but he knew it was her last day, and he wanted to spend every minute with her. He agreed to take her with him. He arrived at the site and went into the cave. Ailey saw the magic mark, and I remembered the novel saying something like this. She couldn't understand how the mage managed to make so many magic circles in the cave where the monsters were. She realized they had been made earlier. Claude looked at the circles and said they were used to summon monsters. Ailey was surprised and asked how he knew that. He wasn't a magician. Claude said that he had to fight alongside mages, and they used similar circles to summon their pets to fight monsters. Ailey was surprised that he was able to memorize such a thing. He was angry and wanted those responsible to be punished immediately for their actions. The Duke wanted to send a mage to check the circles and said to check all the mages that live in the neighborhood. Ailey was confused as to how this could happen, since there was no such thing in the novel. Walking towards the carriage, Ailey was attacked by a monster. Claude protected her with his body, and a couple minutes later, killed the monster. He knew his wife was unhurt, and that was enough for him. Ailey looked at him in tears. He was hurt and fell down. Claude told his wife that he was fine, and she could go rest. Ailey thanked him for saving her and told him that their time limit had expired. Ailey knew she couldn't walk away from him after he saved her. She said she had made up her mind, and she would stay with him. She knew she had to save Claude's life and her own at any cost. Ailey knew how they would die, and that was her advantage. She decided to hang on to the divorce and focus on saving. He went up to her and told her that he was very grateful to her and would try to do his best to keep her with him and not change her mind. The next day, a priestess arrived to heal the Duke's wounds. Priestesses worship the goddess of peace. With their power, they can exorcise demons as well as heal wounds. The priestess began the treatment, and in the blink of an eye, she noticed everything as if nothing had happened. Ailey was shocked and overjoyed. She thanked the priestess. Ta accepted the words of gratitude with all modesty. Priestess and Ailey stepped out into the hallway and began to make small talk. The priestess asked to check Ailey's energy. She hesitated, but agreed. Upon checking, the priestess said she initially felt the presence of divine energy, but when she checked, she realized she was wrong. Ailey was glad no one had bought it out, and I decided to rush to my husband. As she entered, she saw him dressing. She asked embarrassedly if she should come back later, but he said he was done, so she could go in. Ailey said she wanted to talk about the future, and specifically about the blacksmith. The Duke was a little puzzled. She asked him in all seriousness to listen to her. Ailey said she wanted to get into the sword-making business. She wanted to take the stones separately and select them to be of the best quality. She also wanted to start fulfilling her duties as mistress of the house. The Duke said she was free to do what she wanted. Claude asked how much she cared about Noah, and what's her #1 priority. Ailey was puzzled by such a question, but knew she had to answer. She said he's in 3rd place because he's a genius that doesn't exist in the Empire anymore. Claude asked where he stood. Ailey said on the 2nd one. Duke asked who was on first. Ailey said she was, but he interrupted her, saying he had a case come up and needed to leave. He didn't want to hear who came first. He said he would do anything to keep her from wishing her decision away. They arrived at the castle. Ailey got her own personal bodyguards. Henry met them. He was glad to have them back. The Duke told his wife to go rest. She in turn said he could use a rest too. Entering the room, Ailey saw the maid. Ta was very happy to have her back, and tearfully thanked her for what she had done. Ailey knew she had to prevent her husband's death, but I didn't see how it could be done. Things weren't going the way they did in the novel, and she was very alarmed by it. She wondered why Claude had decided to stand up against the imperial family, since he had no apparent cause. Ailey knew she only had 5 months left before he was killed for cheating, so she wanted to know the reason why. Ailey told Henry that she wanted to start running a business. He was very pleased and said he would explain everything to her. The Duchess sat and sorted through the documents. When she was with Henry, it made sense to her, but when she was left on her own, it became very difficult. At times, she wanted to give up. Ailey received a letter from Noah. He thanked her for the opportunity she had given him and said he would be sure to pay for her kindness and make the finest sword. Ailey was distracted from the papers by Rosen. He said that she works so hard that she doesn't even have time to talk. Ailey said the same thing, her husband told her. She asked if he knew where the Duke was. The one said he was at the Knights' training ground. Ailey said it was okay to visit him. Claude was surprised to see his wife. She thanked him for providing a new smithy for Noah. Ailey let the bodyguard go, and they went for a walk. She asked him if he had any information about the circles. He said the investigation was inconclusive, adding that she doesn't have to worry, she'll be fine because he's there for her. Duke also said there will be a lot of talk about it at the founding banquet. Ailey wanted to look amazing on the can. She wanted to outshine everyone. He can accomplish this with the help of Princess Shay's diamond necklace. They drove to the workshop, and they asked me to make a necklace from the stone. The master was overjoyed to be given this honor, and she said she'd get everything done in a timely manner. Claude suggested she look at some more jewelry. Ailey said she's had enough of what she has, but he was persistent. They were offered to buy some rocks, and especially one that matched her hair color very closely. Seeing the price, Ailey stunned a little. The young ladies entered the store. It was the prince and his girlfriend. They all greeted each other politely. Edith said she was very glad to see them. The prince said he let her be the one to call him by his first name. Ailey said she didn't remember agreeing with what he said. The prince said he had heard of her exploits. He said she is unique and fun. Duke started to say a phrase, but when Ailey heard that he wanted to be her, she quickly covered his mouth with her palms. The prince laughed and said they seemed to have a good relationship. Edith stood beside him. He looked at her and said he had completely forgotten about her. Ailey was confused as to how he could say such a thing. She knew there was something between them, and he was letting himself talk to her like that. She stood and stared, thinking they'd had a fight. The Duke looked and said he would get jealous if she looked so intently at other men, and he said he wished she would only look at him like that. She agreed with him. The Duke said to have all purchases sent to them at the castle. We said goodbye and left. They were on their way to the castle, and Claude asked if she was interested in the prince. The girl said no, and asked what made him think that. He said that one was very handsome. Ailey said he wasn't her type, and he had a sweetheart. Besides, she said she didn't know a more handsome man than him. Having said that, she herself was taken aback. He looked at her with miscommunication, and Ailey said he shouldn't speculate. Ailey decided to change the subject and asked why he disliked him so much. He said he didn't like the man because he had an interest in his wife. Ailey asked if he liked the fact that he was going to be the next emperor. Claude said it was a dangerous question, but if she's around, everything will be fine. He said he's sticking to neutrality, and he doesn't care who the next emperor is. The Duke said such topics were dangerous, but he would tell her nonetheless. He believed that the prince was behaving promiscuously after his brother's death. Claude said that at the age of 14, he died because of an accident. He had high hopes as he was very talented and a carbon copy of his mom, so she loved him more. There was a national holiday for the founding of the country. After the banquet, the young man left the palace with his bodyguards to watch the festival. It was northern weather that day. It's raining very hard. On their way back, they passed by a river. The wet road caused the tragedy. Ailey said that one can understand why the prince has changed. Duke said that could be one of the reasons. But when they found the prince's body, they found stab wounds on it. The family investigated the death, but nothing was found. The empress, who was in charge of the investigation, soon passed away. There were rumors that she was poisoned. In the end, the emperor couldn't find out anything and decided to close the case. And after what happened, the prince changed. Claude said that despite all his behavior, he didn't like that he was trying to get close to his wife. Lying in bed, Ailey kept thinking about her husband's words and his death. She decided to push all thoughts aside and get some sleep. She had a terrible dream, namely the prelude of the novel's finale, the scene in which the Duke was preparing a revolt on the imperial family. Ailey was horrified. She tried to reach out to him and stop him, but it was just a dream, and it didn't work out. She didn't understand why he was up to all this. They would have already headed for the castle, but one of the knights said that the prince had found out everything and was heading towards them. The prince asked why he was doing all this. The Duke said he knew all about it himself. The prince asked him if he didn't feel sorry for his wife, since she was going to die too. The Duke was furious and told him not to dare speak of her. The prince attacked him. They didn't have a complete fight. Using a magic sword, the prince killed the Duke. As he was dying, Claude told him not to lose Ailey, since she had nothing to do with it. The prince left, saying it was not in his power to keep her alive. Ailey was furious. She ran to her husband. She wept furiously, and the spirit came to her. The woman asked Ailey if she could prevent her husband's death. Ailey screamed that she would do anything to keep him safe. Waking up, she was distraught from such a dream. Ailey knew that some of the dialogue wasn't in the novel. She wanted to check on her husband and make sure he was okay. Ailey came to her husband. He said she was too pale and asked if she was okay. Ailey said she was healthy and everything was fine, and asked how he was feeling. Claude said he was healthy as an ox. She saw the letter and asked who it was from. Claude said they sent a thank you from the temple for their donations and invited them to visit. Ailey was not left thinking about the woman in the dream, and she asked her husband to visit the temple with her. He said they would go after the meal. Ailey asked if he would eat with her. He wanted to back out, but Ailey insisted, saying it was her responsibility to take care of her husband and his health, and he skipped meals too often. They were eating. Claude wanted to know the real reason why Ailey had come to him in the morning. Ailey didn't want to say anything, but under his pressure she said she had a nightmare. Claude supported her and told her that it was only a dream, and he was there for her no matter what. They arrived at the temple. They were made very welcome. Ailey asked to get a priestess to send to help them and heal Claude. When the priestess came to them, Ailey thanked her again, and they went to look around the temple. Ailey asked why everyone in the temple had white hair. The priestess told me that the greater the faith in the goddess, the more the hair lightens, since it was her color. They walked up the aisle, where an exquisite bracelet was displayed. Ailey asked what the bracelet was. She frantically wanted to possess him. The priestess said it was the bracelet of the goddess herself. Ailey asked why he was holding it so easily then. The girl said he was waiting for his time by prophecy and couldn't just be taken away. Magic has been cast on him, and it takes a lot of effort to get him out of the temple. The priestess also told me that, according to prophecy, it must be kept in this place. As in due time, a man must come who can possess it, and will bring peace. As the priestess spoke, Ailey moved closer and closer to him. She wanted him fiercely. She heard a voice from her dream and was taken aback. She touched the display case and it shattered, and the bracelet was on her arm. The temple attendants came running to the noise. They were outraged by this behavior of the guests. They began to hurl accusations, and a heated argument broke out. Ailey calmed everyone down and asked them to listen to her. They agreed. Ailey told me what had happened all along. The priestess confirmed her story. The ministers were shocked. Ailey said she would take off the bracelet. No matter how hard she tried, it didn't work. She asked her husband, who also failed. Then the girl turned to the minister. All attempts have failed. One of the attendants said there was no way to remove the bracelet and offered to cut off her wrist. Claude heard and said he would kill anyone who hurt her. The priestess said it was because of the prophecy. The novices were a little taken aback. After all, according to them, there was no chaos. So, you don't need the world. The priestess said there are monsters attacking now and a lot of not-so-good people. Ailey was surprised that the one took her side. The men asked Ailey for a demonstration of the artifact's power. It didn't work out for Ailey, and she said she didn't want to wear it and asked to take it off. But the man said they didn't know how to take it down themselves. The Duke was angry. He was frantically yelling for them to take it off or figure out how to take it off soon. The man said they'll figure something out. In the meantime, a priestess will be temporarily introduced to Ailey. They walked to the carriage and talked. The priestess said they would close the prayer room for a while until they could prepare the crafting of the bracelet. Later, everything will be restored, and somehow nothing will be noticed. Claude reassured his wife, saying a lot of nice things, and walked away, leaving the two of them alone. The women said, the priestess said she followed Ailey because she believes she is the true owner of the bracelet and believes in the prophecy. Upon arriving at the castle, Ailey told Henry that the priestess had come to them to light the castle, and while the ritual is going on, she needs a room. The butler escorted the girl to her new quarters. Claude was worried that someone at the banquet might realize it was a real religion. On Ailey, his calmly saying that by then they'll have it down, and if not, she'll say it's an imitation. She apologized to him for adding to his troubles. He said she had no reason to apologize. She didn't do anything. He touched her gently. Ailey suddenly stammered. She wanted to be with him. She felt good at his touch. But she said she had to leave. Ailey was just about to go to bed when her husband came to her. Claude said he wanted to put her to bed. Since she was having nightmares, he wanted her to get a good night's sleep. Ailey lay down. He sat down next to me. Claude told her not to worry about anything. He would protect her. She knew she had heard those words somewhere, and it made her uncomfortable. She asked Claude to stay with her until she fell asleep, looked at her husband, and said that she was somehow uncomfortable with him sitting and watching, so she asked him to lie down with her. They lay down, and she asked him to take her hand. Ailey woke up and saw that Claude was gone. Ailey asked Henry to take care of breakfast for the priestess. The mistress went to the priestess. They sat nicely and chatted about what had happened. Ailey wondered when the bracelet would be removed, and she wanted to know if the priests would attend the banquet. The priestess said they would be there, and she will go with them and watch over her from afar. The day of the banquet was approaching. The maids were running around the mistress in joy. Ailey looked at them and thought they liked the gathering more than she did. Ailey was sent her necklace. When they saw it, they were just awed by the beauty. Ailey said you should pay the master double for such beauty. The day of the banquet has arrived. Ailey gathered herself, and the maids couldn't take their eyes off her. Slipping the ring on her finger, Ailey remembered her husband's words. They made her heart grow warm, and she wanted to be with him. Claude met his wife and said she looked simply dazzling. The girl said he looked graceful. He noticed she was wearing a ring. Claude said it suited her very well and kissed her hand. She got a little embarrassed. They hurried to the banquet. When they arrived at the banquet, they saw that the palace shone with luxury. They were introduced and went between the guests. Everyone was frantically discussing their family life, the necklace that had the most precious stone in it, and the bracelet that didn't match the outfit. Ailey's father, who attended the event. Ailey was indifferent to their conversations until she heard her father arrive. She didn't know anything about him. He was mentioned in passing in the novella, and she didn't know how to act around him. Ailey couldn't help thinking about her father. She was putting all the facts together. Her musings faded away when the imperial family was greeted. The emperor said a beautiful speech and wished them a good rest. They stood and looked at the people around them. Suddenly, her father flew to Ayla's house and started to scandalize her. Claude stood up for her. Dad was angry, and he wanted to talk to her. Ailey said if the man wants to talk, they can do it at the track, and asked her husband to wait for her. He said he would walk her to the track and wait for her. The father asked why his daughter was not following the emperor's orders. Ailey was puzzled. And I wanted to find out a little bit about everything. She said the Duke was her family, and if her father offered her anything more, she would consider it. He only asked her to pass on information about the Duke to him. Her father walked away, leaving Ailey alone. Her husband came up to her and asked if she was okay. He asked what the Count wanted. The girl said this was not the place to talk now, and she would tell everything at a more convenient place. The Duke said that if the wife was uncomfortable, they could go home. Ailey said it was okay and they could stay. They went into the hall. The prince approached them. They talked for a while. The Duke said they had to leave. As they were leaving, the prince noticed a bracelet on her arm. He said he saw it in the prayer room and asked to see it. The Duchess got a little nervous. But approaching the prince, she showed him the bracelet and told him it was only a fake relic. Since she had recently visited the temple, she really liked the goddess bracelet. The prince really liked the bracelet, and said that indeed that one looked like an heirloom. Their innocent actions were seen by the prince's sweetheart. She ran away quickly. The Duchess told the prince to follow her immediately and rectify the situation by saying that there had been a misunderstanding. The Duke and Duchess decide to go to the girl and explain the situation to her. Ailey saw the prince talking to his lover, but to her regret, she was far away and couldn't hear their conversation. Suddenly a servant came upon them. Claude reprimanded him and told him he should be more careful from now on. The Duchess didn't want to make too much fuss and complicate things and said it was fine. She remembered the young servant and told him to go back to his duties. She saw the bracelet on her wrist glow. Ailey decided to approach the girl and tell her that she had misunderstood the whole situation. As she suddenly saw a servant boy attacking them, she realized it was the dark sorcerer. Claude covered her with his body to keep her out of danger. The girl didn't want anyone to get hurt and accidentally use her magic. She managed to use the relic to repel the black sorcerer's attack. He was furious. She didn't realize what she was doing, but she knew she had to do whatever it took to protect her husband and everyone at the banquet. He didn't understand where she got her divine power from. Ailey weakened him very much, thus allowing him to be arrested. Everyone present was at a loss as to what had happened. They were all whispering and discussing the young Duchess and what she was able to do, and the fact that she saved the prince. The temple priestess said they would do anything to support the girl and would be loyal to her. She promised her serves faithfully. To all the commotion, the emperor came running. He was told what had happened, and he used his power against the dark mage, thus revealing his true colors. The mage crushed the poison capsule and died. The emperor was furious at what had happened at his banquet. He handed out instructions to everyone on what they should do and asked everyone to remove themselves from the banquet as it was closed. The emperor thanked the girl for saving his son. Later, the prince approached her. He also thanked her for saving him and Edith. He was surprised and very grateful for her bravery. The Duchess was approached by the priests. They asked her to come to their temple later to commune with the goddess. Ailey knew she needed to visit the temple to learn more information about the bracelet and how to remove it, as well as her power. Ailey knew that today's incident was not in the novel, and she was frantic to find out why that was the case. She didn't understand why she was a minor character, suddenly the mistress of relics. and why she's been given such power. The priestess told her not to worry about anything. They'll try to help her. She also said that the temple will soon declare her mistress of the sacred relic. Ali was a bit shocked by this, as she would not be left alone after such actions. The Duke said they had already prepared the carriage and they could go home. Ailey was very glad that they would be leaving this place. He asked her if she was able to walk, and told her if she was having a hard time he could carry her in his arms. The girl was embarrassed by such a suggestion, as she didn't want everyone watching. Ailey said she can walk herself and she's fine. Then he offered to take her hand in his. They walked slowly toward the carriage. The Duchess said she was fine, and asked how he was after such a shock. Code said he was used to this sort of thing, as there had been many attempts on his life. But really, he was scared for her. He was worried about her, as he couldn't do much about it. Ailey came to be horrified that he had outlived his time, that he had suffered a lot of horror and was used to being attacked. To diffuse the situation, Ailey said that he didn't have to worry. She was there for him now, and she would protect him. The girl asked her husband if she was the real owner of the relic, if it could be a favor to their lives. He said she had nothing to worry about and he would resolve all issues. But he also thanked her for the rescue, saying it was an unusual experience to be rescued.